Hey, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Nine Education's live webinar for 10th class students who are progressing to their 11th and 12th. In this webinar, we are going to discuss four key main topics. Number one is what type of streams are available to you after your 10th, right? Which career options are available to you and which subjects are available to you. After that, we'll try to get to a common conclusion on how to pick the right stream that works for you. After that, we'll go ahead and take a look at how to pick an intermediate college that can make sure that you go ahead and excel in the goals that you have set for yourself. And the last part we will discuss in how to succeed once you do get into your 11th and 12th, how are your next 2 years going to look like and how you can make the most out of it. So this seminar is for everyone who's in their 10th standard. It's also for parents of students in 10th standard. So if you are a parent and if you are looking to get more information on what to do after your 10th, and if you're worried about this, then you're at the right place. Let me actually walk you through this step by step. Give me a second and I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, perfect. So I believe all of you have access to my screen here. Let me get started with the basics. And before we get started, I want to give you a brief glimpse about the image that you see here, right? So for everyone who doesn't know this, this is the IIT Kharagpur main central office, right? So it kind of looks so majestic when you've put it out there. Now, let's start the whole discussion with a concept I like to call the IIT dream. And obviously, it's presented by myself. I'm Nihant from Nine Education, and I handle a lot of career development, personality development, student interactions, and I sit down here at the SR Nagar campus. So let's first begin by understanding what is IIT and what's its future scope. Obviously, like we have discussed, IIT is the full form of IIT is Indian Institute of Technology, and it's an autonomous public institute that is run by the government of India, but it's autonomous. So all of its exams, its curriculum is defined by the college itself, but it's a public institute that is funded by the government. Now, there are total 23 IITs all across India, and the oldest IIT is IIT Kharagpur. It was set up in the year 1959. So 1951, and followed by IIT Bombay, which was set up in the year 1958. Now, usually what happens is when it comes to IIT Kharagpur and Bombay, there's a big debate that goes on with students in all their extracurricular activities or sports activities, right? Whenever these two, college students meet, they have this debate saying, oh, IIT Kharagpur is better, IIT Bombay is better, we have great facilities and so on. It's a fun argument that these guys have. Now, like we discussed, this is IIT Kharagpur, and let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the intake and acceptance rate, right? So because we spoke about how prestigious IIT is, it's this old, it's so traditional, probably 60 to 70 years ago, the first college was set up. So you can imagine the kind of infrastructure, the funding, the teachers who teach there, what's the quality like? Because it's so prestigious, obviously, you can't just walk into an IIT and say, sir, I'm interested in your college. Can you go ahead and give me a seat? That's not how it works, right? So let's talk about how do we actually get into these IITs? What is the intake process like? Now, to successfully get accepted into one of the IITs, you need to clear an exam called the JEE, which is the Joint Entrance Exam. And it's divided into two parts, JEE Mains and JEE Advanced. Now, on an average, just to put things into perspective, 10 lakh to 15 lakh students actually appear in JEE Mains exam. Now, out of these 10 lakh to 15 lakh students, can you guys think a wild guess on how many people actually clear the mains exam and get into the advanced eligibility? Let me give you a ballpark number. So out of these 10 to 15 lakh students, 1 lakh to 2 lakh students get shortlisted for advanced. So if you see, that's close to 10% acceptance rate or clearance rate of the IIT JEE Mains exam. Out of the 1 to 2 lakh students who write advanced, only 15,000 to 20,000 students get accepted into IITs. So only 15,000 students actually get a seat and get placed into one of the IITs. So if you take a look at this, 15 lakh students write the exam and only 15,000 students get accepted, then that's a 1% conversion rate or a 1% acceptance rate into IITs, right? It's pretty hard to get in. Or is it? I believe that IIT is not hard. It's just highly competitive. And if you have the right mindset and the right preparation process for it, it can become easy to actually crack this exam. There's a whole method to the madness that we are going to discuss going forward. So like we discussed, this is an acceptance rate of around 1 to 2%. Now, a lot of students or parents that might be watching the seminar, you might be thinking, sir, if it's that difficult, if it's that competitive to get in, why should I even care, right? Why should I bother? Why not, I get into a regular engineering college, write MCET or any of these other competitive exams, get into a regular college. Why should I bother about IITs? Let's look at that. Let's look at what career options you have after your IITs, what kind of job roles are the most coveted, and we'll try to reason out why IITs are that important or why are they that sought after. Let's take a thought experiment, right? Let's do a small thought experiment. We have two students. Let's call them Suresh and Ramesh, the famous example from the 5-star advertisement. So we have Suresh, who's gone into an IIT. He's doing his computer science in IIT Bombay, let's say, for example. And he's an engineer by profession, right? So he's graduated from computer science branch. He's now a computer science engineer. And the same, we have Ramesh, who's also a computer science engineer. He's graduated from a local college here in Hyderabad. We have a lot of local colleges. So let's assume he graduated from one of those. Now, Suresh and Ramesh are best friends. So they got back together after their placements and they were having a small discussion. So Ramesh goes ahead and tells, hey, I got placed in this great company, Tech Mahindra, and I, as an engineer, I'm now drawing about 6 lakhs of annual compensation. That means Ramesh is making 6 lakhs per annum, where his monthly salary would be around 50,000, give or take. Then Suresh comes and says, wow, dude, that sounds fantastic. I kind of make about 60 lakhs per annum and my takeaway salary per month is 5 lakhs. So does that set things into perspective? An IIT graduate, let's take a look at the numbers. So the base salary of an IIT graduate from India, if he's doing a domestic role, which means in Tech Mahindra or in Reliance or any other Indian companies, TCS, they have an average domestic pay of 30 lakhs to 40 lakhs per annum for the same engineering course that they do. And if it's an international role, the package varies from 70 lakhs per annum to 80 lakhs per annum. If you're, say, getting into Facebook, Amazon, Oracle, any of these other big companies. On the flip side, so Ramesh makes somewhere around 5 to 6 lakhs per annum. On an average, an engineer in our country makes 5 to 6 lakhs per annum only. Whereas an IITian, like we discussed, makes about 70 to 80 lakhs per annum. So let's say he makes 60 lakhs per annum. So what an IITian makes in a single month, a regular engineer makes in his entire 1 year of working. That actually sets things into perspective, right? You can now understand why this is so lucrative, why people are so crazy about IITs. It's because the career options that we have after you graduate from an IIT, the level is tremendous. You are in the next level of your whole career path. You start from a great height. Here's some of the most famous packages that IITians have got. Facebook has given a package of 1.42 crores. Oracle has given a package of 1.8 crores, so on and so forth. Whereas their domestic offers range from 34 lakhs to 40 lakhs to 50 lakhs. It varies. Now, is it to say that everyone who graduates from IIT makes these numbers? Obviously not, right? I'd be lying if I say that. There are obviously some preferred job roles, some preferred streams that actually make really good pay, have a great career after their graduation. So engineering and technology, obviously engineering and tech related to civil engineering or any other streams of mechanical engineering or so on and so forth, they actually have a high demand. The second best job role that you could get into is in the consultation field, in the consulting field. Because you graduated from one of the top universities in the country, you become experts on the field that you studied. So say, for example, I'm a civil engineer from IIT. I am the expert on that topic, right? And I have companies like, for example, the Hyderabad Metro project that we have. There were 3 IITians who were on the board who were guiding or consulting with L&T to make sure that the metro project is a success. Now, other than this, we have seen a new surge in data analytics and data science and business analytics in that side. So that has a big scope going forward as well. Obviously, other than this, the IT and software field is obviously the most lucrative. So any software developer, full stack developer, all of these have great career options. Now, let's start with a very, radical or a thought-provoking subject. We discussed about what is IITs, how to get into IITs, why should you even care about getting into IITs, and why does it matter? Now let's talk about what makes IIT so difficult. What makes it so hard, that so competitive that only 1% get through it. And to understand this, let's try to walk through a small example here. Do you think the number 2 is equal to 1? Do you think we can prove this using any branch of mathematics? If we can, then imagine the implications that it proves. If the number 2 is equal to 1, that means any number is essentially equal to any other number, right? Because if I add 1 on both sides, you get 2 is equal to 3, 3 is equal to 4, 4 is equal to 5, and so on. If I multiply by 50 on both sides, you get 50 is equal to 100. So in your board exams, I think if this is true, in your board exams, even if you score 50%, you can go ahead and tell your parents, see, I got 100%, I'm a topper, right? But obviously, we all know that this is not true. But let me go ahead and try to prove this to you. I think using mathematics and basic algebra, I can go ahead and prove this to you. Let's start with an assumption. We'll assume we have 2 variables A and B, and both A and B are equal. So we have A is equal to B. Now let's multiply by A on both sides. So on the left-hand side, we are left with A square is equal to AB, right? Because we are multiplying by A on both sides. Now let's subtract B square on both sides. So if we do that, we are left with A square minus B square is equal to AB minus B square. Now let's go ahead and do some basic factorization on the LHS and the RHS. Then we are left with, by factorizing both sides, we are left with A plus B into A minus B is equal to B into A minus B, correct? Now what we'll do is we obviously see some common terms here. So let's go ahead and cancel out A minus B on both sides. So what are we left with? We are left with A plus B is equal to B. And since we started with the assumption that A is equal to B, I can go ahead and replace B with A. If we do that, I have then left A plus A is equal to A, which can also be written as 2A is equal to A. And if I cancel A on both sides, what are we left with? We are left with 2 is equal to 1. So there we have the proof. I know a lot of you seeing this might be a little confused, might be mind blown as to how were we able to achieve this, but you have the steps in front of you. We did basic linear mathematical algebra and we were able to come to this conclusion, right? So can you take a minute or two, look through this whole process and see what did we do wrong? Because obviously 2 is not equal to 1, as we know. So there must be something that we did wrong here. And what is it? Okay, so let me tell you where did we go wrong. So if we started with the assumption that A is equal to B, then A minus B should be equal to 0, correct? And if A minus B is equal to 0, then the step number 6 that we did, where we cancelled A minus B on both sides, that's the wrong step. Because in 6th class or 7th class, we have learned that any number when divided by 0 is undefined. And like we saw, A minus B is equal to 0. So you can't cancel A minus B on both sides. So let's go ahead and take another example, right? Let's see another example where the laws and the formulas are on one side, but the exceptions are on the other. We've all learned about the third law of motion, right? Newton's third law of motion. What does it state? It states that every action has equal and opposite reaction. So let's take, for example, I have a ball here and I throw or I bounce the ball on the ground. Now, once I bounce the ball on the ground, the ball hits the ground and it bounces back. But does it come back to the same level or the same height that I threw it from? So say I do it from here. Does it come back to the same height or back to my palm again? No, right? It sometimes falls short and, it always falls short. But then according to Newton's third law of motion, every action should have equal and opposite, right? So it should bounce back, but equally to the same height. So why doesn't this happen? It doesn't happen because Newton's law of motion was coined in an ideal case scenario, where if all the variables of the environment are in favor, which means there is no friction, there is no air drag, it's performed in a vacuum, this would have happened. But in a lot of real life scenarios, you can't get the ideal case environment. Let's take another example. Imagine there's a calendar on the wall, right? So behind me, there's a calendar on the wall and I have, a ceiling fan turned on. Now the force of the fan is, directly hitting the calendar, right? So the force of the fan will hit the calendar. Then ideally the calendar's paper should stick to the wall, but they don't, right? You see that the pages of a calendar always flutter up in the opposite to the direction of the force. So which means the air is blowing this way, but the papers flutter up. This again is an exception, right? It's acting opposite to what it should have done. If the force is on this direction, the paper should stick to the wall. Why doesn't it happen? It doesn't happen because of the concept called buoyancy or lift, right? So this is the same concept that airplanes use to actually fly in the sky. The air goes ahead and settles under the paper so that it makes that air actually makes the pages of that calendar fly up. Now, what does all of this have got to do with IIT? Now, if you see, all the questions that we have discussed today are more focused on exceptions of the formulas than the formulas itself. And this is exactly how the questions in IIT are. You don't get a direct question that says, oh, okay, if this happens, then what is the right option? You always get questions based on exceptions of laws and different formulas. The students are very confident when it comes to by-hearting things, remembering questions and applying the formula. But if it's based on an exception, that's where the student gets a curveball and he doesn't understand how to answer these questions. This is what makes IIT difficult. Now let's kind of sum it up, right? So far, what we have discussed about what is IIT, how many types of IITs are there, why should you care about IITs, how do you get into IITs? Then we discussed about what makes IIT so different, what type of questions do we have, what type of formulas or laws do they focus, how do they focus on exceptions and so on. So now let's focus on why are people so crazy about IITs, right? We have seen a lot of instances where you said, okay, Sharma ji ke bete ne IIT kar diya, yeah, this person's son has gone into IIT, this person's daughter has gone into IIT. So why such craze? Let's try to sum it up. Do you recognize these people you see on the screen? Obviously, we have Sundar Pichai, we have Parag, we have Sachin Bansal. Parag is the CEO of Twitter. We have Sachin Bansal, who founded and he manages Flipkart. All of these people have one thing in common: is they're all alumni of IIT. Now, Obviously, let's look at a few points here. IITs are the best institutes in the country when it comes to doing engineering, right? If you want to do engineering, IITs are the best institute in our country. Now, obviously, they're blessed with a lot of grants and funding from our government. Now, if they have a lot of funding, that means that they have the best infrastructure and the best teachers available. Now, demand amongst the students for IITs is a byproduct of the demand amongst the employers for IITians, right? So if all the employers only want to hire IITs, then all the students want to become IITs, correct? Now, flamboyant alumni, of course, like we spoke about, we have Sundar Pichai, Narayan Murthy, Sachin Bansal, all of these guys are alumni of IITs. So if you think about it, your network, if you graduate from an IIT, is such that you have a CEO of a very big company as your best friend, you have your classmate heading another startup and he started something. Imagine the kind of network that you might have. Now let's try to talk about what does it actually take to get in, right? Obviously, number one, like we discussed, there's an entrance exam. The entrance exam is divided into two parts, JEE Mains and JEE Advanced. Now, this is the statistic of the registrations, number of registrations for JEE Mains in the last 5 years, right? 5 to 10 years actually. So if you see on an average, we see about 12 to 15 lakh students register for IIT JEE exam every year. Now, of course, like we saw, they need to clear the JEE Mains, then they need to clear JEE Advanced. And after they do this, they obtain something called as an All India rank, right? Now, the seats are given or allocated based on the All India rank. Now, you need to be on the top 1% in the country to actually secure a seat, which means 15 lakh students write the exam, 15,000 seats are only allocated. A stunning fact about IIT Bombay, like we saw, it's the most prestigious IITs that there is, right? Because it's, you know, one of the oldest IITs. Can you tell me what you think is the average rank a student has to get into computer science in IIT Bombay? Well, you might be surprised to see that if you want to get an IIT Bombay computer science seat, you need to get an All India rank of 1 to 66. So out of these 15,000 students also, you need to be the best 66 students and only then you will get into IITs, right? It seems very fascinating, but at the same time, we have seen how it cannot be difficult. It is not difficult at all. Now let's focus a little more on your 10th standard, right? We have spoken a lot about IITs. We've spoken a lot about what to do after your 11th and 12th, what to aim for, how, you know, having a big aim differentiates yourself. Now let's come back. Let's, you know, get our head in the game. We are right now in 10th standard, right? And from your 10th standard, you basically have three main options to choose from. We have seen a lot of students take only MPC, BIPC, MBIPC. We can, you know, group them together and call them sciences. Or the students can take commerce, MEC, AEC, CEC, all these other subjects. Let's group them into commerce. And then there is arts. You can take fine arts, graphic designing, hotel management, n number of options. Now, this information is not new. You can go do a quick Google search and you'll figure out that, okay, these are the different streams that I can take. But what is new is how do you choose the right option for you? How can you make a decision or choose the right stream based on your strengths and weaknesses? Now, we have a lot of ways to do this, right? Number one, you can go to your parents, you can ask your parents and say, hey, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to become an engineer? Do you want me to become a doctor? Whatever you tell me, I'll go ahead and do that. Now, this might be a good option, but do you think following someone else's dream or following their ideology of what you should do will never reflect good on your strengths? Correct? That's a second option. You can ask your friends. Maybe you have a best friend who's doing MPC from a certain college. And you would also say, okay, I love my best friend, so let me go ahead and do MPC from the same college. Because he's doing it, I'll do it too. I don't think this is a good option as well. Now, there's a last way to do it as well. You can ask your relatives, other well-wishers, maybe a brother, maybe a cousin who studies really well, who's in a good position. You can ask them, hey, what did you do? I will do the same thing. I don't think this also is a good decision. So who's the right person to make this decision for you? I think the right person to make this decision is you yourselves. If you are a 10th grade student, you already have the required knowledge, understanding of your subjects to figure out what stream is a good fit for you. And to better help you in this process, let me ask you 3 questions and we'll start answering them to see which stream might be a good fit for you. Okay. My question number 1 is, do you often ask the question why, or do you blindly just accept things as they are? So when someone comes and tells you about a concept or about a subject, are you curious enough to ask why? Right? Now let's come at the second question. The second question I have for you is, do you try to understand the logic behind something, or do you blindly just memorize things? Like 2 2s are 4, 2 3s are 6. Do you just blindly memorize things, or do you understand what is the logic behind something? The third question I have for you is, are you an inventor or are you a follower? For example, you look at a well-designed app. You look at Swiggy, Zomato, these apps. Now, do you blindly just say, okay, I'm happy just ordering food on this, and I love that there's an app, I'm happy with it, let me just use it? Or do you sometimes think, hey, how did they build the app? What triggered that idea? How did they come up with the idea? What is the thought process behind this? Do you often think like that? Now, if your answers to these questions are yes, I often ask the question why. Yes, I try to focus on logic and not just memorize things. And yes, I see myself as an inventor rather than a follower. Then I strongly recommend that you go ahead and learn more about MPC or the engineering stream. The reason for that is these questions help us understand if you have an analytical mindset or not. And anyone who has these 3 abilities will fare really well when they put their minds behind the sciences stream, because they like to deduce logic, they try to understand logic and then figure out answers based on that. So, okay, we are in 10th. We figured out what options we have. We figured out how to pick a right option. What question should I ask myself to pick the right option? Now let's go ahead and figure out what is the right college and how do I pick that right college? Because obviously the next step from here on out, you might go ahead and start looking at other colleges. You might visit a couple of colleges with your parents or your other guardians. So let's try to make that decision easy for you as well. And to do this, let's take a small thought experiment, right? So we have 2 colleges, College A and College B. Now College A has traditional and conventional faculty, where the faculty is a little bit old. They are not in the same age generation as you. So they might not relate to you as much. They might not be able to explain to you as efficiently, as possible. Versus there's a College B that is run by all young IITian faculty. Now these guys are very young, maybe 25 to 30 years of age. They belong to almost a similar age generation. If given a choice, which college would you rather pick? Would you go for College A with traditional faculty, or would you pick College B that has young all IITian faculty? Pretty sure a lot of you have said that I'll go ahead and pick College B. Now let's look at a second scenario. There is a College A that has 60 to 70 students per classroom. Now there are a lot of famous colleges, big brand names, where they stuff 60 to 70 students in a single classroom, and there is no personal interaction between the teacher and the student. Versus there's a College B that just takes 35 students per classroom and makes sure that there's a lot of interaction between the teacher and the student. There is personal attention that the teacher can give the student because of the small faculty that we have. Now, let's take a third scenario. There's a College A that has a very, a long study hours. They have long college hours where you go at 6 in the morning, come back at 9 in the night, and that is your whole life. They have a very stressful environment as well. Versus B, there is a college that not just focuses on giving you the best subject knowledge, but also focuses on your extracurricular activities like sports, drama, music, and also focuses on holistic learning, which means your communication skills, personality development, and so on. If given a choice, which college would you pick? college A or college B. If a lot of you have started thinking about college B and feel like college B is a good fit for you, given all of its qualities, then I strongly recommend that you come ahead and learn more about us at Nine Education. We are an intermediate college that is run by an all IIT faculty. We only take 35 students in a single classroom so that we ensure that there is a lot of communication between the teacher and the student. For cracking an entrance exam like IIT, it becomes very important that the students and the teachers have a great rapport and great understanding between each other. And that is what we strive to do. Now, how do you get in touch with us? If this is something that seems interesting to you, here's how you can get in touch with us. We have 3 branches all over Hyderabad. We have 1 branch in SR Nagar, another branch in Kottapet, and the last branch is in Vidyanagar. You can go ahead and contact us on these numbers that you see on the screen. We have given our 2 branch numbers on the screen. You can also scan these QR codes to get a location to each of the campuses, whichever is closer to you, wherever you guys stay. You can go ahead and visit the campus that's nearest to you. The whole idea being you can come down, have a conversation with our teachers and our faculty here to basically see if Nine Education might be a good fit for you going forward in your 11th and 12th journey. I strongly recommend that if you resonated with all of this, please do come down and give us a visit. And I would love to talk to you all of, talk to all of you personally. I personally sit down here at SR Nagar campus. I'd love to see you guys here. Thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of this webinar. It was exciting to talk to you and share our knowledge with you. And we hope to do this continuously on a recurring basis. And we will notify all of you as soon as the second webinar launches. Thank you so much for your time today.